Hey, and welcome to the Next Level Podcast with Dr. Leslie. I am your host. Today is super exciting for me because we have an expert in the physical body, in physical therapy specifically, who has been working with me to get me pain-free. We'll talk to you all about it. As a reminder, this platform is about helping you reach your highest potential in every domain of your life. So it's not just about health or your well-being, your spirituality, your personal development, really all of those domains that affect you. It's really important for me to see every one of my clients and all of you, all of my beloved listeners and followers to really, truly reach your highest potential. And there are many areas of our life that we can have deficits in. So I hope to help fill those gaps so you can be your best self and live your absolutely best life. So without further ado, I have Ron Gallagher here today. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hey, so Ron is very special to me because he's been spending a lot of time in the early mornings, which I suck at getting up for, at his physical therapy studio right next door. It's Maximum Velocity Physical Therapy. Ron is a licensed physical therapist, has a master's in physical therapy. He also has a podcast that is Hyperspeed Radio.
Hyperspeed Radio.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. He has some incredible clips and videos and tips for you to really, you have to hear it from him and from my own experience working with him. It's really transformational. He's taken my physical issues and completely turned them upside down in a positive way in literally 3 weeks. Ron.
It's a GIF.
And I was not skeptical by any means, but I was really like, okay, I would love to see this again. I was dedicated. I did all the things. And I actually wasn't even as dedicated as I should have been, but I was getting such great results. And, life gets a little busy that I kind of, flubbed a little bit. But I literally it was about 3.5 weeks, just because I had a week there that was kind of crummy. I was pain-free. So explain yourself, Ron. Well, firstly, I just put him on the spot. I'll tell you a little bit about why I came in to see Ron. So I've been dancing since I was 5 years old, Ukrainian dancing, ice skating, fallen many times on the hard, cold ice. Did ballet, of course, bendy, hyper flexible, destroyed my toes and probably knees and back. And then I decided to do bikini muscle competitions, which I was very successful in, but obviously that can be very torturous. And I came to Ron because I wanted to start lifting again, and I do dance, Argentine tango, and I wanted to be able to have a long physique, not lose my physical aesthetic, still keep my muscle, but be able to do it without pain. Because when I was doing my 3-day-a-week leg days a couple of years ago, I could not do it without massive pain up into my hip and down my knee. It would wake me up in the middle of the night. And when I was competing, I told you this, Ron, 3 days a week, I would do my leg day. I could not survive my prep or my pre-competition training without taking this. It's called Cellchem. It totally helped relieve that, whatever, the lactic acid, all the stuff that was going on. But I had to foam roll and stretch and all that stuff that he told me was the worst thing ever. And I have not used any of that now because of your program that you literally whipped me in shape in 3 weeks. Right. Mind-blowing. Right. So now explain yourself. Why does your method work? Why was I taught something totally different in all of my training, that stretching and foam rolling was the best thing, but really it was the worst?
Right. Well, when we did your evaluation, like all athletes who come to Maximum Velocity will get a thorough evaluation. I'll hear the history and then do some testing. Upon testing, we found lumbar spine, hips, knees to be very, very mobile, if not more mobile than normal. I think we used 120%, so 20% extra range, and then no stability muscles to back it up. So essentially, you had a ton of unchecked range of motion as the Argentine tango is fast. So the faster you move with the least amount of stability, the more sort of clunking your body does. And, the X amount of minutes that you were doing that causes irritation by the joints being in positions that they shouldn't be in and not having the muscle support. Essentially, we have two types of muscles: local muscles and global muscles. Local muscles are small and in charge of one joint at a time and offer stability, while global muscles perform gross motor motion. And when I think you were training before, I think your global muscles were probably very, very strong, but your local muscles could not support them. So you were basically asymmetrical or uncoordinated or lack of stability, and the lack of symmetry got you in trouble. It'll definitely offer symptoms. So by getting those muscles to be balanced with each other and then teach them to work together, it basically takes 2 or 3 weeks to do that, because you didn't start with poor strength and you weren't in tremendous sort of inflammatory pain. You were just sort of beat up. And getting you more stable, getting you stronger, getting everything to work together meant everything was on the same page. All the joints move in sort of normal range, and then there's nothing beat up.
And that's so great, and it makes sense. It's not how we're taught, being Western medicine trained, like I had shared with you before. They didn't even suggest I would never have before recommended heavy lifting because it wasn't research-based. Although there is a lot of research,
Yes.
In my own training from doing bikini muscle competitions, that I did start training people that way. The problem is they would end up getting injuries. So, that's partly why Western medicine doesn't recommend that, because people get injuries, and the whole point is to prevent injuries, and the common person really doesn't understand the collateral. They wouldn't invest in their preventative or going to physical therapy and all that sort of thing. So why is it that these small little collateral supportive muscles respond so quickly? Like you had said that I have the great, global muscle strength, but it took me, I remember, 6 months to put on 10 pounds of muscle. I recompositioned my body. Took a long time for those big global muscles to hypertrophy, which makes sense.
Right.
But these little guys, like 3 weeks.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, because they were at first they were undertrained, so you hadn't really loaded them and isolated them. That's really what I did, was isolate those local muscles and then give them a little bit more load than what they can tolerate. And then they rise to the occasion quickly, because they also have to work, say, when you squat. And so I also made you squat. So they get work primarily when we're isolating them, and I use those as the warm-up. And then when you squat, they have to work as well. So they were on double duty. So they had to adapt really quickly. And essentially that's what I did to your skeleton, was force it to adapt in a very short period of time.
And I felt it quite immediately. By week 2, I really felt more stable. Like I remember when I was squatting before, firstly, I hadn't been squatted what I used to squat when I was doing my bikini prep until, like I said, last night I texted you. I was like, oh my God. And I had no pre-workout, no supplements, nothing in my body. It was late at night, post upper respiratory viral infection, when I shouldn't have even been lifting. And I did it, and I lifted, I think, 4 reps, 5, 5, and 4. Because the last one was just a little bit too tough for me. And I was able to keep my knees totally open, like they didn't give. Remember at the very beginning, I was like wobbling, my knee kept coming, moving inwards, and I was getting that pull on the inside of my knee.
Right.
And it just completely shifted everything. And I'm really excited to see where I can go. Not that I want to necessarily lift heavier than this, because you said for squatting, we should be lifting our weight, which I'm basically lifting,
Yes,
give or
I
take.
think every person 8 years old to 80 years old should be able to squat their body weight. And that's just for general orthopedic health.
So that's research backed.
For sure. For sure.
Okay.
That's a starting strength concept. Starting strength is a strength and conditioning outfit out of Texas that I've found to be very effective at helping athletes strength train and reach a level of performance. But I think it's important to note that, we hear personal trainers and physical therapists and everybody sort of squabble over squat technique. I do believe that there is one basic squat technique that everybody should be utilizing for health anyway. And that's feet about shoulder width apart, toes out about 30 degrees, and pushing your knees apart. And I think by putting the femur in that position, the hip joint can move a lot more clean, and then you can access your local muscles a lot more than you could before. So even if you were doing appropriate stability exercises, if you squat with your toes, what I call perpendicular to the mirror, then your acetabulum is so shallow that the femur can't rotate through there. And so you don't reach the level of depth that'll call your glutes in. So it'll be over quad. It'll call in your quads a little too much, and it overloads your patellar tendon, and it just makes so that your knees are really, really heavily loaded. When you're in that knees out position, then the only muscle that can hold you up is your glutes. Mm-hmm. And so you basically offload your knees, which is why it doesn't hurt your knees anymore.
Which is the whole reason we do squats, is to get that nice, round, strong booty.
Straight peach.
We want the peachy booty.
But most people in the gym aren't programming an adequate squat to get to that peach.
Right.
I got to put my hat down and not real pay attention to what's happening, because it's not my place to correct all the squats in the room. But
I bet that would be so infuriating.
There's a lot of bad squats.
You want to just go around and hand your card out. When this breaks, call me, or
exactly.
or do it now. But oftentimes people are very reactive, and once they have pain, guilty, then we show up on your door going, fix me, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
We want to avoid that. And we had talked too about how athletes self-select. So there's a big, again, because this is not mainstream, again, having been educated in Western.
It will be.
I hope so.
Within the next 5 or 10 years, it'll definitely be mainstream. So this is totally research backed. It's not just the island of Ron out here with a particular opinion. This is all research based, and my profession has to catch up, and that's really what's happening. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, there'll be a lot more physical therapists preaching the right information. It's just sort of cutting edge sports science.
Absolutely. And actually, the Institute of Medicine created my degree, the doctor of nursing practice, to bridge the gap between literature and the bedside, because on average, this is in 2008 and before, it took between 15 and 17 years for research to be put to practice at the bedside. That is dismal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
People like me and you who are clinicians.
This is the physical medicine version of that.
Yeah. So we need to bridge that gap. And hopefully we're getting much closer to that, because it's just crazy seeing all these athletes
Well, that's the reason
suffering.
why we do these podcasts, to try to
educate,
have a platform to educate.
And it's so critical, because it's interesting, because I stepped back from lifting heavy for a while, because I was very much fascinated with the blue zones. You're familiar with blue zones, like in Sardinia and around the world, these people who are centurions who live over 100, and their eating habits and their physical exercise and all that sort of stuff. And they don't eat a lot of protein, which is not ideal for muscle hypertrophy, right? A lot of carbs, a lot of oils. They walk around a lot. So they're living to 100, but they don't look all that great. And I can't swallow that pill because I am a little bit vain, or a lot vain. I'm a perfectionist and want the best of the best in everything. I want to look great. I want to feel great. I want to have the best life. I want to have, my financials set. Like, I can have it all. And I just, as much as I wanted to live healthily to 100, I was not going to look like that. And just Google Blue Zone, Centurions, Sardinia, whatever, and you'll see what I mean.
Because it's not thriving. I mean, it's existing, but it's not really thriving.
Right, and you can have both.
God forbid you have groceries or something that you got to take up the stairs, or, you're going to have to interact with your environment at some point, and you can't just exist.
Right.
So,
and I want to look good.
There's definitely a functionality to being able to move heavy loads.
Of course, right. It absolutely is. Again, that lifestyle, though it's appealing, and I want to live with great cognitive function and not have any diseases, which comes with that kind of lifestyle. But again, it's not functional. I want to be able to carry my bag of groceries or do whatever I need to do. But I also want to look good as well. It's important to me, to my confidence, to just the way that I like to be in the world. It's just my choice, and I want that. And lifting heavy doesn't just offer that. It's also actually very good. As I've worked with you and I've learned more about it, and again, even from my extreme days in the bikini muscle competition, I'm actually feel stronger now and able to lift, like I said, without the caffeine, with all the extras. And I'm like, holy cow, how is my body going to respond now? And if I change my eating habits, like, it's opened up so much more for me and for other athletes.
For
and
sure.
Like you had said about athletes end up self-selecting themselves out of their profession. They have to retire from ballet early, or, the Cirque du Soleil performers. I had seen so many of them in my clinics before, and they're getting injuries left, right, and center because they didn't have this sort of support that you talked about. And you had talked to me about the 4 tiers of exercise that I sucked so much about. We talked a little bit about that already, but it's the foundation you have to build.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that I determine how a person is training versus where their body is at is I've over the years developed 4 levels, 4 tiers of exercise that a person should be able to do in order to get to the next phase. So if you report with hypermobility and basically no stability, then your body is in tier 1. But
I was literally almost there. Like, I was teetering between tier 1 and tier 2. He was kind of laughing at me. I'm like, oh my God, my body sucks. I have so much flexibility and like literally no stability.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
But then you're training at tier 3 or tier 4.
Right.
So the further you are from your capability, the more it hurts. So we filled in tier 1, built in some of that stability. Tier 1 is range of motion and stability. And then tier 2 is weight bearing. So we did some weight bearing exercises that essentially take the tools that you learned in tier 1 and apply them to tier 2 with your body weight. And then from your body weight, initiate heavy lifting, which would be the 3rd tier, which would be barbells. And every person who walks through the clinic for knee pain gets a heavy squat. Every person who comes in the clinic with lower back pain leaves with a heavy deadlift. Every person who comes in the clinic with shoulder pain leaves with a heavy push press. And essentially, that tier 3 is a progression of tier 1 and tier 2. And then once they can do that, then whatever their sport or work activity that they're trying to build in is a lot more available. So in your case, that was tango. So now when you go and you dance for 3 hours, you're pain-free because you have a solid foundation that progressed to weight bearing. And then once you can do that weight bearing, then you we're able to tolerate a load, and then from a load, you can do it quickly.
So what is it that's actually creating the pain in this difference in the strength in that foundation? Is it the pulling of one on?
For you, I would say that it would be connective tissue, and the connective tissue that surrounds your joints and actually your tendons moving too much for an activity that should be more precise. So there's a wobble to it.
Because
And
I was so flexible.
because you were over flexible and understable. So when it wobbles too much, it causes friction, and the friction, I think, is what causes the irritation. So really, I didn't do anything to remove the pain. I just stopped the wobble from happening, which had a pain-free effect.
And it's so true, because I have a lot more stability with my dancing, and I can actually move faster.
Yes.
Because you
Because
you
the
were
strength is
saying,
underneath
it's
that.
tighter, and so I
Right.
have more ability. There's not a lot of jostling, so I am finding
Right.
that I have much more ability to be quicker with the movements. And that was one of the things that I was worried about. I said, well, I don't want to lose my flexibility. I still want to
Right.
be able to kick high and
'Cause
have that.
We're talking about the difference between flexibility and mobility.
Right.
So mobility is the joint's ability to move through normal range, while flexibility is the ease in which the motion occurs. So if you have more mobility than you need, and you're using flexibility to feel better, you're creating a more wobbly system, which is traditionally how they handle things in the arts.
true.
That doesn't feel good. Let's stretch it. Let's stretch it. Let's stretch it. Unfortunately, it has an immediate better feeling because you're changing the sensory system,
That's right.
but you're not physically changing the reason why the pain is there, because it's over wobbly. So if we treated these problems, like even from a young age, in a ballet studio with stability, with heavy squats, there would be far more pain-free dancers and just as mobile, because the flexibility is a trap. And I've had, very, very high level dancers in the clinic that are pain-free because they squat heavy really deep. So they essentially challenge their connective tissue in a deep mobile position, and that's what creates stress-resistant tissue.
And that makes so much sense. So you hit on two really, really big things. And this is, again, scientifically based, even on the medical side. I don't know if you've ever had this done to you, or you've seen a parent do this, like when a child stubs their toe or gets an owie or something, they squeeze on the part like within an inch of that area, because it actually stops the pain fibers. There's like
Sure.
different types of pain fibers.
You close the gate.
You close the gate. Exactly.
Right.
So stretching, it made so much sense when you explained this to me. I was like, oh my God, I know this. How did I not connect the dots? But it
Right.
was just ingrained in me.
Well, I mean, the Juilliards, the Broadway, those are broken physically people. They're very, very injured. I mean, it's a rite of passage to get to that level, and you just accept the fact that it's supposed to hurt. Well, the whole culture treats problems the same way, and that's why they're painful. Not because to dance at that level you need to have pain. So in the clinic, I joke around.
So you're so right.
I joke around and I call it bro science. So if you talk to dancers, if you talk to lacrosse moms, if you talk to triathletes, everybody's going to have their own version of whatever they're doing, and the way that the athletes educate each other is the bro science. So it's my responsibility to bust all those myths up and give them what's really going to work for their training. And so more stability, heavier loads in full range of motion will protect the mobility that they need to have to be in the positions that they need. They need full splits. They need heavy leg kicks, but they need to do it underneath a load rather than passively stretching it. Because underneath a load prepares the connective tissue to tolerate the speed, while passively it just lengthens it.
Right.
And the lengthening over time creates wobble, and the wobble is what hurts.
And it's just every time we talk about this, my mind just gets re-blown because I've literally have been programmed for so long from not just my athletic time, but also and dancing in a company, but also from the Western medicine, like that this was so, we just have had it all wrong. And people are really struggling. There's so much pain. I'd seen so much pain in the clinics, and it could be so easily fixed. And
It's easily fixed.
and from my own experience with you, even when I had torn like my shoulder, or I injured it. When I was reflecting back, and I didn't tell you this because I was just thinking, why is it that I kept having the issue? Well, I stepped back from my heavy training. When I stepped back into it, I was stretching in between my freaking sets of 4 to 6 rep range. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I was strengthening and
Right.
then stretching a massive muscle.
Right.
It was so confused
Right.
about what it was needing
Right.
to do.
You were crossing up your nervous system.
Totally. And
Yeah.
and I'm just like, no wonder I hadn't had that particular injury when I was training younger. I thought, oh, I'm getting old, which I know is bullshit, but I couldn't
Right.
put my finger on it. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't like that answer, but what
Right.
else could it be?
Right.
But then when I dissected, I'm like, I wasn't stretching before. That's not what the literature said. Somehow, again, I thought I needed to stretch in between my heavy 4 to 6 rep range
Right.
lifting.
Right.
And that was just completely jacking up. My whole body didn't know what I was doing. Am I
Right.
stretching? Am I relaxing? Am I shutting the pain fibers off?
Right.
But I need the pain
Right.
fibers to be able to tell me when to stop. And it was just screwed everything up.
Nervous system is all over the place. Length and tension ratios are not clean, and you just get, bumps and wiggles from all that extra range of motion, and it hurts.
Right. Yeah, incredible. So
Yeah.
for those athletes out there, the ballerinas, the ladies and gentlemen who want to keep a very, very lean, light weight, because even for me, as I'm starting to get into more competitive dance, I can feel the difference between 3 pounds on my frame when I'm trying to move and jostle and do all the quick movements.
Right.
And I don't want to get big again. And
Right.
so when we lift heavy, like I said, I completely recompositioned 10 pounds of muscle in 6 months. I lifted 4 to 6 rep range, all of the things. It was great. I looked
Right.
amazing, but very masculine. I was also eating very clean. So I was like ripped, shredded for a long time. I don't want to look
Right.
like that. So
Right.
how do you convince people like me and other dancers that
No, it's definitely-
it's gonna keep, we can keep long and lean but still lift heavy for a maximum benefit and aesthetic?
We have to remember that hypertrophy requires set range of 8 to 15. So by doing like the sets and reps that you're doing is a 6x5. So in order for your muscles to actually grow, you need to be with heavy loads from 8 to 15 on the rep range, and then you need to have the nutrition to support that.
So my understanding was 4 to 6 is actually where you can get maximum muscle hypertrophy if your protein levels were.
No, 8 to 15 is really where hypertrophy happens. So you can be strong, but not necessarily grow. And then, to be honest, I don't even think that it's possible for women to grow unless you add exogenous testosterone. So you have to be doing things to supplement your testosterone in order for there to be a huge change in muscle girth. So I don't think that women will actually get bigger. And across the board, that's what I see clinically, is they actually get smaller. But when they look in the mirror, they see a recomposition that they haven't seen before, and it seems like that would be bigger.
It's true.
But if we actually take a measuring tape and we measure the girth, we're going to find that it's actually less. And then waistline will diminish. Your shorts will fit better. I mean, I hear it all the time.
That is actually true. So that point, so when I did my muscle competition, I did not use any of those, extras, the testosterones or any of the illegal things that people tend to use. I wanted to do it very naturally. So that is very true with my nutrition and heavy lifting. I did shrink. My pants hung off of me,
Right.
whereas they didn't before when I was more skinny fat is kind of the trending word.
Right.
But I did look more muscular. I looked more even masculine, dare I say that, because I was walking around with like a raging six pack, all the veins popping out and everything. My shoulders were huge. But to your point, yes, there's a maximum amount of muscle that a person will just get naturally. Like there's
Right.
no more. So it doesn't
Right.
matter how much you lift. That's like the maximum you're going to be able to do,
Right.
no matter the weight.
Right.
But for me, because I put muscle on so well, I don't want to necessarily look like that. If I don't have a pristine diet, I'll grow my muscle, but then also keep some of that fat. So I might get wider, right? That's what I would want to stay away from.
I don't think so. I think with the amount of time that you're dancing, I mean, it's essentially cardio. I mean, it's unweighted, it's hours on end, it's high intensity. I mean, that's essentially cardio. I think that cardio would keep you lean and prevent you from any hypertrophy. So I think the 6 rounds of 5 will give your muscles the ability to move against a load. And then with the amount of time that you're spending dancing, that'll keep it from getting too big.
So
Unless you were loading up on like protein shakes and like really, really taking in a ton of protein, I don't think you would get any bigger.
So it's really a balance then that people would need to, athletes that are wanting to stay lean, really they would
For
have
sure.
to
And
reprogram everything, not just the way they're heavy lifting versus their athletic sport, but also their nutrition, possibly even their nutrition on the days that they're doing their athletics versus the days that they're lifting weights.
Totally.
Yeah. That makes sense. I could absolutely see that.
The trend in women's performance is so fun to watch. I mean, I remember my sister 20 years ago, living in a world where, she wasn't allowed to be an athlete. And now, there's tons and tons of women gym rats who want to put on size.
Right.
And when you talk to them, they're going to tell you how much they eat. And when you see how much they eat, it is like probably twice or 3 times the normal, sort of average woman's diet with regard to protein, just super clean, lots and lots of, like their body weight plus, some in grams of body weight. So, if you want to gain muscle, that's how you do it. You have to be heavy consistently with nutrition to support that consistently. And that's how your body will adapt. But if you're burning tons of calories by dancing, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Awesome. And that makes total sense. And that's really where it's been. I've actually leaned up a couple of pounds. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've leaned up. It just kind of dropped off the last couple of weeks. I've been dancing more and doing this heavy lifting. God, my body just responds so well to burning calories with that muscle or the weight load.
I don't think there's enough women who know that.
And it's like, really, this is so important because women that you need to understand. Like, I did videos. We'll do another video when I come in tomorrow morning, bright and early. But of me squatting, like my body weight. And I mean, you can see the way I look. We'll show you some other photos as well. But really, it is the key. And I get stopped often and people are like, oh my God, what do you eat? What do you do for lifting weights or exercise? They don't believe that I lift in that rep range.
Right.
It really is. And you made a very good point. And I tell all of my clients this, whether they're on the coaching side or in my program or in the clinic, it is 80% food intake, like you said. If you want to bulk up and really lift heavier and make your weightlifting gains, you have to eat like a, like a carburetor. Americans don't know what a carburetor is. Garbage disposal. You need to just be gobbling all of that food down. But you can really mitigate and composition your body how you want to. And really, the weights don't have to necessarily change too much as long as you have a regular regimen. So women, you really need to understand that heavy lifting is not the scary thing. The diet is. And the diet is the main piece to longevity, physiologically, to weight management, outside of hormones and making sure that's balanced. But food is the bigger topic of conversation. This is really about getting an aesthetic and being pain-free and having that vitality and functionality for as long as you possibly can. Am I right? Did I leave anything out?
Absolutely. No, I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a woman in her 70s, late 60s, early 70s, who just deadlifted 95 pounds.
Wow.
And she feels.
I think that's more than I'm deadlifting right now.
No, you're up to 135.
Am I? Okay.
But she got to 95 and she feels absolutely amazing. I mean, she doesn't have any falling. She can now walk a few miles around her house. She can carry her own groceries, carry her own suitcase. Like those are really, really important things. And the less stress resistance she has, the easier it is to make her fall, the easier it is for her to get in trouble. It's just super important that she lifts heavy.
Right. And to extend beyond that too, to get a little bit medical and preventative here, because this is also about being preventative in terms of disease processes and injury in our later years. When people suffer, particularly women, have hip fractures, because we're at much higher risk for hip fractures. Our survival rates, this was back a while ago, 10 years ago, it was like 50-50. It was ridiculous. You break a hip, your chances of surviving that were really crummy.
The number one reason a person dies after the age of 65 is a fall.
Yeah. So we want to avoid that, and we absolutely can. And lifting heavy, again, it's not only going to help give you that physical aesthetic appearance that we all really appreciate and want to look young and plump and beautiful for as long as we can, but it really is functional, and it's going to potentially even save your life in your later years. So if you are not a heavy lifter, if you don't know anything about it, Ron, I'm sure you have a trainer that can help people along, but you definitely want to come in and see him so he can get you strong and stable right from the get-go with those supportive muscles before you start embarking on a global muscle, building endeavor, because you don't want to end up getting to a position like me and many, many others where you are wobbly and ridiculous and have lots and lots of pain and end up injuring yourself, and it's not repairable, because I'm sure you see that a lot too.
For sure.
All right. This was really great. Ron, thank you so much for being here and for taking care of me.
You're
and welcome. Blowing my mind with all this new information. And I'm so glad that we can share that with everyone else. You got to see him. You got to come and see him. Where can we find you?
Maximum Velocity Physical Therapy is the clinic. MVPT is the Instagram. And then Hyperspeed Radio is the podcasts. So if you just want some information, you can find it there. If you need me in the clinic, that's where to find me.
Excellent. All right. Thank you again so much. Until next time, everyone.